Shalom, this is Dan. Hey, I want to talk to you about our next Torah portion, which comes out of Numbers 13:1 through 15:41. Now, translated from the Hebrew, this is "send on your behalf." Before we get into the whole Torah portion, though, I want to tell you a story. Now, you might know the story from a history class or so, but it starts out in the year 1511. Now, 1519. In 1519, there was this Spanish fleet, and it had 11 boats. That's where I got 11 from. Sorry about that. But it had 11 boats and about 500 men. Now, they were based off the coast of Cuba. And what happened is that Spain wanted to extend its borders. They heard that there was some land for the getting out in Cuba, and so they decided to put together this fleet with Hernan Cortez being the guy in charge. And he would go out over to the Cuban area, and he would take over the land, and they would claim that land for Spain. Well, there's some good and bad that happened in here. First of all, Cortez gets his men all together. They go out there. They do a little bit of battling on the easy parts, but they heard that there's this Aztec Empire, and they got some gold and all that type of stuff there, and that's really what they're after. So Cortez, he's got these new recruits that came after their first couple little battles there, and so they're all on the beach. They're doing their training and stuff like that, and keep in mind, though, through the whole time here, Cortez never told his men what was really going on. They think they're going to go out and get some gold or, get a little bit of land, something like that. I mean, if they got the land, they could actually live there themselves, and that was pretty good because Spain was already kind of sparse at the time. So they're looking for, Spain was populated, so they're looking for something that's got some room here that they can get some beachfront property on and stuff like that. So Cortez, he's got his men, and they're all on the outskirts here. They're doing their practices in the sand, making sure they got all the right stuff that they're going to need for their battle against the Aztec Empire, because this is a big empire. Well, Cortez says this one thing to his men before they decide to embark on this battle here. He says to the men, "Burn the ships." Now, when I first heard this, I thought, what? Did I hear that right? The guy said, "Burn the ships." Burn the ships. If you burn the ships, how are you going to get out? If things go bad, how are you going to get back to Spain? How are you going to do anything? Burn the ships. What's that mean? Well, it turned out that Cortez didn't want his men, because he heard that they were getting a little fearful. So he didn't want his men to have this inkling in the back of their mind that says, well, if the going gets tough, I'm just going to get out of here. I'll roll myself back to Spain or something. He didn't want that in the mindsets of the men. What he told them is burn the ships, because this was the thought, the idea, that if there is no way to retreat, the men are either going to fight hard and conquer, or they're going to have to leave in the ships of the Aztec people. And so sure enough, they burned the boats down. They got no way of escape. And what happens? Cortez's men go out there and they fight hard, and they win against the Aztec Empire. Now, why do I share that story with you? Does it really have anything significant to do with our Torah portion? Yes. Because what had happened is the people in Cortez's time were beginning to hear the words, and they were beginning to get fearful. They were beginning to hear the scuttlebutt going around on the beach there, and they were beginning to get scared. And what happens is when we hear things that aren't right, our hearing gets skewed, and our perception gets skewed. And this has happened to me many times before. And we see the same thing happening here in this Torah portion, because if you know where we are, you find that this is the Torah portion where the 12 spies were sent out from the camp. Moses sent them out, and they come back 40 days later with both a good and a bad report. You got 10 guys that come back, and they are saying, hey, this land is good, but there are these guys who are giants, right? I mean, it says that they even consider themselves to be as the size of a grasshopper, according to what they were seeing in the promised land. Now, there are two guys, though, Caleb and Joshua, and they come back and they say, yeah, you know what? What these guys are telling you are right. These other 10 guys, they are big, but, and there was a big but here, because this but is what ended up saving Joshua and Caleb from the destruction that came on the rest of them. But our God is big, and He can take care of it. Right? Now, here we are with the hearing thing again. The people in Cortez time, they hear this fearful thing, they get scared, they think, oh, we're not going to win this, and then bam, Cortez makes a way so that they ain't got no escape. They got no reason as to why they can't fight hard. Well, here we are again. We got these spies that went out, and 10 of them are beginning to tell the people, hey, we can't go into this land. It's too scary. It's got too many things going wrong for it. Yeah, it's got the honey and it's got the milk and all that stuff, but it's got so much big stuff that we don't want to encounter. And they begin to do their own little scuttlebutt. They get it going around the camp, and then all of a sudden the camp becomes fearful of what's going on, and there begins to be this picking sides type thing. And what happens? There's a punishment for those 10 spies that went out there and brought back a bad report. But there was also punishment for the people, because here we are. We're probably still within the first year or so of them coming from Egypt, and here you got them in the desert. Moses has sent them out to be spies, and we know that they traveled around the desert for 40 years, but there is the verse that says in this Torah portion that for every day that the spies were gone, they were gone for 40 days, for every day that the spies were gone, they were going to wander in the desert for a year. And so we know that because they walked around for 40 years, this is where it happened. This is where it started. This is where that whole 40 years in the desert thing happened. And it was because God was just not happy with the report that came back. Now, for Joshua and Caleb, they were spared, because we see that Joshua, he ends up taking Moses' place and goes into the promised land with the people. And we know, we know that Caleb was older, and even still, he was like, give me my piece of land. We read this later on, and he's ready. He's ready to plant himself down in the promised land, and God granted that to him because he came back with a good report. Now, I share this story with you about the Cortez as well as about the spies, because I want you to understand this. What we hear, it's so easy to believe. We got to make sure we're hearing the right things. We got to make sure that we're believing the right things. I go to work every day, and I got these things that are coming at me. I got friends who are sharing all their bad news with me all the time, and their opinions with me all the time. And sometimes what they have to say is good, and sometimes what they have to say is bad, and I got to choose what I'm going to listen to, just like you got to choose what you're going to listen to. You can't be listening to the bad reports that the spies bring, and then coming alongside with the spies and say, oh, you must be right. No, we got to listen to what God says. That's what Joshua and Caleb did. Is they agreed. Again, they agreed. Yeah, these people are big, and yeah, man, the land is prosperous, and yeah, we're going to have to fight for it. But God is on our side, and they didn't forget that. Joshua and Caleb both came back, and they even tried to share with the people, look, God is on our side. Don't forget what God told us. This was prophesied way back when, that God was going to take the people from Abraham's time, from where they were in Canaan. They were going to take them into slavery. I think this is in Genesis 15 or 16, if I remember right. And it even said they were going to be there for a specific amount of time, and then they were going to come out and go back into the promised land. And Joshua and Caleb, they're banking on this. They heard this when they were kids in Sunday school or whatever, and they're just holding on to it because this is what God promised. And it even goes back to something else. We've got to remember what God has told us. What has God told you specifically? I know what God has told me, and I got to hold on to that every day. And some days it's easy, and some days it's hard. Some days it's really hard to just remember, this is what God promised me, and this is what's going to happen. I tell you what, there's a lot of good stuff in this Torah portion, but I want to just rest right here and give you something to think about. Think about what you're listening to. There is crap all over the place, and is always trying to get into us. Remember what John 10:10 says. It says, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. The devil, he's not really all that smart. We already know his game plan. His game plan is kill, steal, and destroy. That's all he's good at. That's all he's trying to do. But God gives us his promise. Hey, you know what? I'm going to give you life more abundant. And you know what? I'm going to direct your path. I'm going to give you a vision. I'm going to give you a goal in life. And we got to listen to what God is saying, not to the voices of the world. Listen to what God is saying and bank on it. Stand on it, just like Joshua and Caleb did. Some days it's easy. Some days it's hard. I got a word back when I was a kid and I was going to be a pastor. I'm 38 years old. I got that word back when I was like 9 or 10. I'm not a pastor yet, but I bank on it. Some days it's easy. Some days it's hard. But I know what God said to me, And I'm going to choose to listen to the voice of God as opposed to listening to whatever the enemy is going to try and throw at me. Again, his whole plan, steal, kill, and destroy. He doesn't want to see me succeed. He doesn't want to see me walk in God's way. He's just going to throw whatever junk he can in my path. But you know what? I got to listen to what God says. And you got to listen to what God says. What has he told you? Are you banking on it? Are you standing on it? Don't get sucked into all the other junk that the spies are trying to share and scuttlebutt around the camp. You listen to what God has said to you. That's what matters. I'm Dan. Shalom.